Hello and welcome everyone to our webinar today on checking in to check up about staff and volunteers. My name is Sarah Webster, a knowledge broker with Niagara Connect. Also joining us today and acting as chairperson in our meeting room is Sarah Johnson from our team, who will be available to answer any tech-related questions that you have. As you heard when you dialed into the phone line, all of our lines are muted. That just helps us cut down on background noise and allow those of you that are joining as groups to have any sidebar conversations that you'd like. But please do use the chat pod down the left-hand side of your screen to put forward any questions or comments that you have. We'll make sure to save some time at the end for discussion. We also are recording our event today. I do see some familiar names joining us, which is great. And I know some of you were able to join us in parts 1 and or 2 of our series. In November, we looked at board governance. And then in December, we took a look at finances and fundraising. If you were unable to join those events, we do record all of our events, and when we send the resource package out for the webinar today, we'll make sure to include a link to those recordings as well so that you haven't missed anything at all. But we're really excited. As I said, this is our third and last webinar in this series in partnership with the Niagara Community Foundation. And we have Bryan Rose, Executive Director from Niagara Community Foundation, joining us today, as well as with Rosanna Thoms from Imagine Canada. And Rosanna is a Certified Standards Program Coach. So she's got some great stuff to share today, and I'm going to turn it over to them to take us away.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And just before we kick things off, my gratitude to the two Sarahs for their amazing support on the technical side, and our great partners at Niagara Connects. We wouldn't be able to execute a webinar of this nature without their support. So our thanks to Sarah and Sarah. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Bryan Rose. I'm the Executive Director of the Niagara Community Foundation. Today is the final of our 3 webinars covering the aspects of the Imagine Canada Certified Standards Program and a bit about our Governance Partners Program here at the Foundation. A little later, I'm going to introduce you to one of our superstar GPP consultants, Rosanna Thoms. But I just kind of wanted to talk to you, share with you today what we're going to go over. A little bit about the Foundation and the Center of Excellence of Nonprofit Governance. And our focus today in regards to the Imagine Canada Certified Standards being staff management and volunteer involvement. So that's what we're going to cover today. But to kick things off, we would just love to know who's out in the webosphere with us. If you could please take a moment to fill out this survey and let us know who's with us today. Please just click on the choice that best describes your role with the organization you're with. That would be great. Okay, and the results are in. All right, well, a nice mix. That's great. Some board members, a few EDs and CEOs, staff, groups as well. So that's wonderful. Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much. Second question, could you please let us know if you've attended one of the other webinars, just so we know if we have returners or some newbies as well. Okay, fantastic. That's great. So some individuals who are joining us for the first time and some seasoned veterans. So a nice mix. Thank you very much for participating. So today, just a little bit about the Niagara Community Foundation. We were founded in 2000 and modeled after the State of Maine's Community Foundation. We are extremely proud to work with all 12 municipalities here in Niagara. And since 2000, our endowment has grown from 2 $100,000 gifts to being just north of $30 million. And in that time, I'm proud to say that the Foundation has granted over $8 million to charitable organizations here in Niagara and just beyond. So we are a charity of gifts. Many donors support us in a lot of different ways, and we pool our money and for the benefit of Niagara and to fulfill the donors' wishes. As mentioned, we do have a very robust granting program and support charitable organizations here in Niagara. We provide philanthropic leadership and support many of our charity partners throughout Niagara, and we like to bring people together from all sectors to identify and address the issues facing us today and leverage any opportunities. As a result, we feel that the Governance Partner Program is a natural extension of our commitment to philanthropic leadership. So with that in mind, we launched the Center of Excellence in Non-for-Profit Governance back in January of 2016. We realize that governance in the non-profit sector continues to be a challenge for everybody. PD training is available, but sometimes it's hard to source. A lot of the reason for that is time and money. Organizations have the best intentions to participate in activities like this, but oftentimes budgets and time are constraints that hit everybody. So we feel that providing these opportunities to non-for-profits out in Niagara is a great way to facilitate that. The Center for Non-for-Profit Governance is open to all interested charitable organizations, and there are opportunities to learn from existing successful governance-related programs, and we've been capacity building since our inception, and we're proud to continue to do so. Like any great organization, we have a mission and vision. So our vision is to provide a stronger non-for-profit sector in Niagara, and our mission to increase the efficiency and effectiveness of Niagara-based charities by providing financial support, advice, capacity building to foster the environmental, social, and cultural and economic sustainability of the community. So we do have a number of resources. A lot of them are available online, obviously. Governance resources, Canadian resources shared on the Niagara Knowledge Exchange website, so www.niagaraknowledgeexchange.com. I'm sure our friends will put that in the chat area for a link. There are lots of professional development opportunities shared on the Niagara Knowledge Exchange community calendar, so please go onto that website and see what's available. And capacity building grants for marketing, board development, website enhancement. And that leads us to our most recent program, and that's the Governor's Partners Program. So the GPP is a new program where consultants work with charities to improve governance standards to align with the Imagine Canada standards. So we'd like to emphasize that this program is only for registered charities or for non-for-profits that are working with a charitable organization or a municipality as a lead. So that's where we are. So the knowledge that many organizations have struggled with board and governance, we've invested in creating the Governance Partners Program. What we've done is we've contracted 3 local consultants with tremendous experience in their sector. They've supported their own experience with training with Imagine Canada to become certified standards program coaches, the first of 20 in Canada. So where to begin with work in governance is often a challenge. People don't know where to start. So we're leading that off, and we have these 3 wonderful consultants to help do so. The foundation has created an assessment tool to help identify your organization's government strengths and areas for improvement, all based on Imagine Canada's standards. So what we ask is that people log on to our website and they complete a full board or senior staff ED gap analysis tool. From there, the agency can use this tool internally, or you can reach out to the foundation and, with the use of a consultant, develop and build your program. If using a consultant with the foundation, we will cover half the costs. So you're only in it for half. Again, we're providing not only the ability to access information, but we'll also help you with the financial constraint. However, whether or not you decide to work with one of our GPP consultants, the gap analysis tool is an extremely helpful resource that you can use. So please log on to the Community Foundation website and you can find that gap analysis tool there. We have 3 wonderful GPP consultants. In the past, we've already heard from Gay Douglas and Lynn Russo. And so today it's my pleasure to introduce Rosanna Thoms. Rosanna has spent her professional career of 37 years with Information Niagara, 27 of those as the executive director. She's focused her energy on developing the organizations to the highest level of professional achievement. And this past year, for herself, along with her GPP colleagues, Rosanna has been certified as a standards program coach through Imagine Canada. She has tremendous experience with board governance and has led her own boards from traditional governance models to a policy governance model, developing required policies and procedures. Under her leadership, her board has completed several strategic plans and developed and implemented a succession plan policy. Rosanna has a strong commitment to the community and the volunteer sector herself. Over the years, she's led many boards as presidents here in Niagara and province-wide, including the Early Childhood Community Development Center and the Fort Erie Refugee Reception Center. We are so thrilled and honored to have Rosanna as one of our GPP consultants. Her experience, leadership, along with her own personal and professional commitment to philanthropy, is a shining example for all of us. And now it's my pleasure to pass the mic over to Rosanna. Rosanna, over to you.
Thanks, Bryan, for that kind introduction. And thank you all for attendance at this webinar. Now, just one other quick poll for you, just to get a sense of how familiar are you with the Imagine Canada Standards Program. So there should be a poll on your screen now. Could you fill it out for us?
Survey says, all right, the majority quite, we are aware of it and use it, but, what am I reading? Sorry, not very, heard of it, but don't know much more. Okay.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you a bit about Imagine Canada standards. So there are about 73 standards, and they cover 5 functional areas of an organization: board governance, financial accountability, transparency, fundraising, staff management, and volunteer involvement. Now, these standards were developed by Imagine Canada to build excellence within Canada's charities and nonprofits. And also to strengthen the sector, to strengthen the confidence in the sector of donors and government funders. Imagine Canada does use these standards for their accreditation program, but you taking part in the GPP program does not mean you have to go through the accreditation program unless you choose to do that. Today, what we're going to look at is staff management and volunteer involvement and the standards that are around those, the standards that fit around those areas. As was mentioned previously, the GPP program has developed 3 tools. They're gap analysis tools for different size organizations. And so if you have a small organization, 5 full-time employees or less, or annual expense of $2 million, you could fill out that tool, and then it just goes up. More employees, bigger budgets, you could fill out the second tool. And the idea is, as more sophisticated and as you have more staff, then of course you need to have more in place when it comes to standards and policies and so on. So today, as I said, we're going to look at staff management and volunteer involvement. So in the standards program, there are 13 standards that relate to staff management. And these are in areas of policies and other documentation, recruitment, orientation and training, performance management, and staff development. And then 9 standards related to volunteer involvement. Now, I'm going to spend a majority of my time in the staff management, looking at each one of those areas and looking at a couple standards in there and then a couple standards with volunteer involvement. Now, I know that none of these standards will be new to you. My hope is that by participating in today's webinar, you would be checking in as to what you already have and perhaps thinking about what you can do to improve what you have. So for the first staff management standard, one of the policies that is required is the organization must have written HR management policies that comply at a minimum with employment, health and safety, and other applicable legislation. So why is it important that we have HR policies? And it really does not matter the size of your organization. If you have more than yourself, you need policy, and you need it in HR. And it's really, HR policies will outline your organization's expectations of staff. On the other hand, it also allows your staff to know what they can expect from management in HR. It allows and it ensures that all your employees are treated fairly and in compliance with all applicable legislation. It also kind of formalizes your unique work culture, and it ensures that any decisions that you may take over the years are fair and consistent. So in other words, that you treat all staff fairly, regardless whether what year it is or who the staff is. Some of the policies that you should be looking at is on this slide here. So hiring, performance management is a really big one that I know is a struggle for many nonprofits. It takes time. Your policy should talk about holidays and vacations, hours of work, leave of absence, overtime, termination, really important. If you have it in policy, it makes the job that much easier, should that happen. The other thing that you need to remember is it's not good enough to develop HR policies, get them through your board, approved, and then put it on the shelf. It has to be a living document. And by that I mean that HR policies should be accessible to all your employees. In today's world, most organizations put it on the internet, on their intranet, and also may have it online somewhere for staff. If that's not possible, then a hard copy in your office is also suggested. Your policies should be available to all employees at all times. It should not be a secret, and it should not be hidden from them. I mentioned, standard mention applicable legislation, and I've just put here 5 different types of legislation that you probably want to be aware of and to be knowledgeable of when you're developing your policies or revising your policies. I'm not going to go into it in this webinar, but information is found widely on the internet and any of the government websites. Second standard that I'd like to look at on the policies and other documentation is all employees must have a written job description. And you know, everybody would say, oh yeah, you know, that makes perfect sense. But it's surprising how many employees may not have a job description or may have a very outdated job description. And so why is it important to have a job description? And really, it provides the employee with what is required of them in the job. It lists all the activities that you're expecting them to do in the job, and it will also list their competencies in there. It allows them to know what you want of them, and it also provides a basis for their performance evaluation, which we'll talk about in a couple of slides. A well-written job description will also be used as a communication tool when you're going through the hiring process. I cannot stress how important it is to really spend time developing good job descriptions. And once developed, once more, must be updated. Some of the ways I've found easy to keep them updated is every year at a performance evaluation is bringing out that job description and having a conversation with the staff member as to whether this reflects what they're doing. And it's really quite interesting to hear what they're doing that's not in the job description and what they're not doing that's in there. And that gives you a time, if required, to adjust that job description. So when that employee leaves, you have a current job description. So keeping them up to date, really, really important. The second area that I would like to look at is recruitment, orientation, and training. So you have your job description, you are going to hire for a position. And you need to make sure that your recruitment and selection process is objective and consistent. And of course, it complies at a minimum with human rights legislation. The reason for that is you need to ensure that any potential employee, any person applying for your job, all your potential employees are assessed on the same criteria. That means that makes your process of recruiting fair and professional. You know, the same way as an employer, we are looking at individuals coming in for a job. They're also looking at you and your professionalism. And it starts with the recruitment process. Criteria for selecting employees should also be based on that job description. So remember, that is a tool that will be used in many ways in your organization. Taking the job description, what you would do is try and develop some criteria that you want to measure your potential employees on or your candidates on. Suggestion is do this way ahead of the interview process. And then use a scoring sheet of the criteria that you want to base people's skills on. Be very certain that if you need somebody to have a car because they're doing outreach or fundraising, that you make sure they have a car in the process. It's not good enough that they have access. They must have a car, else they'll not be able to do their job. Through the selection process, it's also suggested that you can do it in many ways. Today, what I've noticed is many employers are starting with a telephone interview, and they start screening people out through a telephone interview before they bring them into the organization for an interview. You can do a written assessment, or you can do relevant tests depending on what the job is. So the thing to remember is develop criteria based on a good job description before you get into the recruiting process. It costs organizations approximately $6,000 to replace an employee making $30,000. So anywhere between $30,000 to $50,000, the word out there is it costs you 20% to recruit and train. That's a huge amount of dollars to nonprofits if they're hiring and not getting the correct people. So you have your correct person, and they're new to your organization. So of course, the next standard is that any employees new to the organization should be provided with appropriate orientation and training. Now, the standards don't exactly say what appropriate means. It's left up to you to determine that. Why do you want to do that? Well, simply orientation improves an employee's performance. It will strengthen their commitment to your organization and promote staff retention. You remember, $6,000 if they're making $30,000. So you want to keep that person. If you orient, and an effective orientation process will give the new employee practical information to help them be successful in their role. It will also help them understand the organization's social environment and its unique culture. Every organization has its own unique culture. You want your new employee to get familiar with that as soon as possible. Now, orientation is not just 2 hours as a person comes in. Orientation takes a while. It should start as soon as the person comes in, but depending on the role and the sophistication of the role and how high up in the organization, whether they're management or whatever, will determine how long orientation could take. And what happens very subtly is you move from orientation to training. Because orientation is one thing, but then they need to be trained in the tasks that you're expecting them to do that's flowing out of your job description. A suggestion is if you're in the process of recruiting, that you in fact start developing an orientation, training, and supervision plan prior to hiring. Don't wait till the person arrives in your office on Monday to start figuring out who is going to sit with them and so on. The good thing about if you create good training and supervision plans for your employees, for each of your employees' positions, is you have them once you've done it, and then you will just tweak it as your new hires come in. So once it's done, it's really very easy to change, and you need to use it a second time. The next slide just basically gives you an idea of some of the orientation topics that you might want to cover. Of course, that HR management policies that you've spent time developing is one of the first things that you probably need to go through with them. If you have benefits, you want the employee to understand what they have access to, your mission, your vision, the structure, how funding happens in an organization, expectations of their job. You know, a job description's one thing, you know, start to talk and fill out and tell them their expectations. Organization culture and values is something also you want in your organization orientation. The last standard I'm going to look at comes under performance management and staff development. And it's a simple standard, yet probably one of the most difficult ones for us as nonprofits to implement, and that the performance of each employee is assessed at least annually. This, I know, is a huge struggle for EDs and managers, and it's simply at times a time issue. And the more staff you have, of course, is the more time it's going to take. But it is really, really important to do it on an annual basis. And sometimes even not waiting for that annual. If you recognize a staff is having difficulty in their job, it's really, really a good idea to pull them in and have the discussion about what's happening and not wait till the end of the year or whenever that time is to do their evaluation. Evaluations assist staff, help staff to know what they're doing good. It doesn't mean that during the year you don't give somebody a tap on the shoulder, send them an email or a shout out at a staff meeting for a good job done. But performance assessment really can play a role in not only succession planning in your organization, you get to see where the staff members really excel in, and maybe they could, move into another position should it become available. It also helps you see where they're encountering challenges. And you want to do this because we all know a staff member not performing could negatively impact an organization. And you want to really nip that in the bud before it starts to happen. So cannot stress the importance of performance evaluations, at least annually. There are tons of information on the internet, in HR websites about how you could develop a performance evaluation system. The good thing today is you're not alone in it, and there's tons of information. The other thing you can do is ask a colleague that's running a similar size organization that may have similar positions, what they're using that you can use and tweak to your organization. So my next slide is about volunteer involvement. And there are two standards I'd like to look at with volunteer involvement. And the first one is the organization has policies and procedures that define and support involvement of volunteers. We talked about having HR policies for staff, where we need policies also for volunteers. And volunteers, in many cases, in many organizations, are treated like staff and should be treated like staff. You need different policies, however, because their volunteers are not being paid, and that's why it's really important that you separate those two policies. It's a good idea to have volunteer policies that relate to how you're going to use your volunteers, because it starts to formalize the roles and responsibilities of your volunteers. It also ensures that they understand and carry out consistently through the organization. So everybody understands what the role of the volunteer in, your staff as well as the volunteer. It also, having volunteer policies also, I think in many ways, it demonstrates your organization's commitment to supporting its volunteers. It plays an important part in risk management. You're having volunteers in, they may come in once a week, they may come in once a month, and you need to ensure that they are following your expectations and what's in policies. It also allows your volunteer to know what's expected of them, just like staff and their staff policies. Some of the policies that you may look at in developing, if you haven't developed, and this will depend. Your policy manual will depend on how many volunteers you use and how frequently you use them. If you use a volunteer, just for one volunteer in a quarter, your policies probably aren't going to be as sophisticated as an organization that uses a huge amount of volunteers and on a consistent basis. So here are some of the policies you may want to develop, what your roles are first. So the job description for your volunteer, your screening, your grounds for dismissal of volunteers. And a lot of people, a lot of EDs pussyfoot around letting volunteers go. And, if they're not doing what they should, and if they are going to harm the organization or create trouble in your organization, you need to let them go, just like you would let staff go. Good idea to put down in policy how that process happens, so they know when they come in. Your policy, you'll talk about how you recruit, what orientation and training, if you do any reimbursements, how they'll be supported, if they have insurance coverage, all those kinds of things that you could create, as I said once more, depending on how many volunteers you use and the frequency, the sophistication of your policies would relate to that. And the last standard that I am going to look at with you is the volunteers are provided with appropriate orientation to the organizations, its policies, practices, and receive training appropriate to their roles and needs. Once more, it parallels what you would do with staff, maybe not at the same level, but all volunteers coming in should have an orientation to the organization, to your expectations, to the culture of the organization, and what they can expect. And if you're expecting them to do any type of task that requires training, then they should also receive the training when they come in. Remember, orientation will get your volunteers up to speed very quickly with your organization's policies and will help them to act in alignment with your organization's values and practices. So with that, those are the standards from the Imagine Canada standards that I plan to bring to you today. Remembering that hopefully going through those standards, as I said previously, most of you are familiar with those standards and could say, yes, we have them. The challenge very often is how up to date they are, and are they complete, and are they available, and so on. So just to get back to the process for the Governance Partners Program. If going through any of these areas, you think to yourself, well, I know we have HR policies, but yeah, they probably are outdated, or I could need some help with job descriptions or developing a performance management system. Those are some very good areas that you could apply to the Governance Partners Program for. But before you do that, we would like you, and we suggest that you contact the coordinator.
It's Gay.
Gay.
Yeah.
I had a brain freeze there. Gay.
Gay Douglas.
Gay Douglas. And she will assist you and talk to you about going through the gap analysis tool. Or you could go to the website yourself and go through the gap analysis tool. Remember, there are 3 there. Pick the one that suits your organization. The next thing you would do is make a work plan with what priorities you would like to look at, and then select a consultant. You apply, and the Niagara Community Foundation will review and approve your work plan, and you could get started with a consultant. Any of the information that Bryan or I have talked about when it relates to the program, the overview, the process of applying, the tools, the consultant bios and contact information is all available on the website that's listed there on the slide for you. So at this time, I'd like to take a break and ask if there are any questions.
Rosanna, wonderful job. Thank you so much. Any questions out there?
Wonderful. Thank you. We did have a question earlier on. Juliet asks, or it says, we are currently applying for charitable status but do not yet have it. May we apply for funding assistance as our current not-for-profit festival?
I would say that is certainly a worthwhile conversation. So Juliet, if you would like to, reach out to me, and then we can have that conversation. The short answer is it depends. Most likely, especially if you've applied for charitable status, we can certainly work within that. The parameters for us are simply our mandate to work with charitable organizations and support their activities. So if you're applying, we can talk some turkey.
Wonderful. Any other questions from anyone on the phone? I see here Vince says, is there a set of employee or volunteer standards that a new agency could start with? I'm guessing it's kind of a template.
If you look at the gap analysis tool, it's actually based on the standards. And I would suggest if you're a new organization, then you would use the level 1 gap analysis, and you will see the standards in there.
Great. And Sarah just put up the link to the Foundation's page of Governance Partners Program, which has the gap analysis tool information there. So you can take a look at that. You could also take some time and review the Imagine Canada Standards website. It's an excellent website that is pretty clear and provides some great direction, for questions like that, and gives you some very good guidance and a solid roadmap.
Perfect.
And there's the Imagine Canada website.
There's the Imagine Canada. And as we continue to take some questions, I am going to put up the contact slides just so people have time to jot down those email addresses. Kelly asks, are consultants' rates based on hours, and if so, roughly what would be the rate?
So yes, it's based on the number of hours. The consultant's rate is $100 an hour, but the foundation pays half of that. If you completed the gap analysis tool, chatted with Gay Douglas, our GPP coordinator, and then you're matched up with a consultant. From that point, you develop a work plan together and a budget, so you're able to help control that cost level based on what you have available and what's agreed upon between you and your consultant. And then the consultant is paid $100 an hour. Half of that is covered by the foundation.
Wonderful. Thanks, Bryan. Any other questions? And if someone prefers to ask any questions verbally, you can do so by unmuting your phone line by pressing *7. Or, of course, you can use the chat pod down the left-hand side of your screen. Any other comments from people who've maybe gone through this process or roadblocks or challenges that you've experienced with respect to staffing and volunteers and related policies? I was really interested, Rosanna, when you were talking about the cost to an organization to find someone new, to recruit and find someone new versus retaining staff that you already have. That was not a number that I had heard before. I think you said 20% approximately.
Yeah, 20%.
It's a very sobering number, isn't it? Wow.
It is. Yeah.
And that number takes in, from the time all the hiring and your time and your management staff time, and then all the orientation and the training. And if you add those hours up, it's quite significant. That's why it's so important to really ensure that you can get the right person into the position.
And no one wants to lose really strong colleagues and partners. So it really behooves an organization to do everything you can to, make your colleagues and your team feel appreciated and, and effective. So it really speaks to that.
Yeah, and getting the right people in the job and then helping them hit the ground running once they get there, and then speaking to your performance review kind of conversation that you were having, making sure that there's a continual check-in and a focus on that retaining as well. And as you say, the pats on the back are just as important. Mary says it's a good example of upfront planning costing less than paying for downstream consequences. Absolutely.
Well said, Mary. Well said.
Renee has asked, if your organization is in the process of implementing a new strategic plan, when is the appropriate time to consider the GPP program?
Well, that's a great question. Really, at the end of the day, I think you could almost do things it depends how far you are down in the strategic plan. So I would say if you're down that garden path, considerably, then you might want to finish that up and then look to, the Governance Partners Program. If you're just starting, that process and you're feeling like you could use a little bit of help with that, our consultants, the 3 consultants, have amazing experience with that. So they could assist you not only, on the standard side of things, but they could also be an ally for you as you look to complete your strategic plan. So you could have, someone with tremendous wisdom and experience guide you through both of those pieces. So it really depends. I would say that it will never hurt for you to reach out to Gay, and Gay will be able to have a conversation with you and help you assess where your organization is and then how the Governance Partner Program can be of value to you immediately or down the road. So, the answer would be, reach out to Gay, and then she can help steer you in the right direction. But a great question.
Any other questions or comments? I see that Sarah has put up a link there as well to sign up for our distribution list. So if you're not already on our Niagara Connects distribution list, it's through that channel that we advertise future webinars that we have coming up, as well as share our weekly e-newsletter that goes out Friday mornings. And that's a link to any new content that's been added to the Niagara Knowledge Exchange, including blogs, partners, upcoming events, and with a particular focus we've seen in the last few months as well on governance and not-for-profit related events, as well as the same for resources and publications. So it's a great way to kind of stay on top of new content that's coming out specific to the Niagara region, but Ontario and Canada publications and events as well. So if you're interested, the link is there. But regardless, just by participating or registering for this event today, we will make sure that we send you the resource package within about a week, and that'll include a PDF of the slide presentation today, a link to the recording, other related websites and contact information, as well as we'll include the recordings from the 2 previous webinars as well, so that those who weren't able to attend can certainly get caught up on those as well. I don't see. Oh, go ahead, Bryan.
I was just going to say, just before we wrap up, I do want to say thank you again to everyone for chiming in today and participating. We've had some wonderful, over the last 3 webinars, we've had some great participation, excellent questions, some wonderful feedback from people who have participated, and some organizations that are very keen and interested in this. And so we're thrilled with the feedback that we've received, and happy to spread the word about the Governance Partners Program and how people that are dedicated to philanthropy here in Niagara are really eager and willing to help each other. That's what we're here for. So please utilize the resources as best you can, and it doesn't have to be something as formal as the GPP program, but don't hesitate to reach out to your counterparts all throughout the region. I also want to say thank you to Niagara Connects once again for being our technical backbone to this. Sarah Webster, Sarah Johnson, thank you so much. The 2 of you are awesome. And finally, just the link to the recordings are on the Foundation's website as well. So if you weren't able to catch the other 2, please jump onto our website. And then finally, don't hesitate to reach out to me personally. If you have questions about the Foundation or the GPP program, and I can obviously help steer you in the right direction, and especially get you in touch with Gay. So I'm happy to be a bridge to that. So thanks to everybody.
Thanks, everyone. And we'll be talking to you soon, I'm sure. Thanks, Bryan and Rosanna.
Thanks.
Have a good day, everybody.
Take care, everyone.
Okay.